She called me small and suffocating when she left, taking everything in our divorce. She was the celebrated philanthropist. I was just the boring engineer she'd outgrown. But a single email she sent me by mistake revealed her perfect new life was built on a secret so monstrous, it had turned her beloved community center into a ticking time bomb. And I was the only one who could hear it ticking. I never thought I'd be telling this story. My name is Marcus, and for 15 years, I believed I had built the perfect life with Eleanor. I'm a structural engineer, not the flashy kind who designs skyscrapers, but the guy who makes sure your office building doesn't collapse. Numbers, stress points, load calculations. That's my world. Eleanor used to say I could find the weakness in anything. Turns out she was right. The truth is, we'd been crumbling for years, but I'd been too focused on the surface cracks to see the foundational damage. Eleanor came from old Seattle money, the kind where your great-grandfather has a park named after him. She'd married me partly in rebellion, I think now. The daughter of privilege choosing the son of immigrants who'd worked his way through state school. Her mother, Victoria, never let me forget it. Eleanor could have married the Whitman boy, she'd say at every family gathering, loud enough for me to hear. He's a senator now. But in those early years, Eleanor would take my hand under the table, squeeze it 3 times, our code for I love you, and I'd know we were solid. The smell of her lavender perfume still haunted our bedroom when she served me the papers. "You're suffocating me, Marcus," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "All you care about is your spreadsheets and safety margins. When did you become so small?" Small. That word echoed as I watched her pack her Hermes bags. Bags I'd noticed were new, though she'd said the foundation's budget was tight. She moved with practiced efficiency, like she'd rehearsed this scene. Maybe she had. "The therapist says you're emotionally unavailable," she continued, folding her silk scarves. "That you treat our marriage like one of your engineering projects. Always looking for problems, never just enjoying what we built." I wanted to ask which therapist, the one we'd seen together twice before she declared it wasn't working, or the personal one she'd started seeing after her father's funeral, the one who charged $400 an hour. That was when everything shifted. Her father's death had left her with not just grief, but a desperate need to prove she was more than just old money. The charity had started as something beautiful, us working together, her vision, my planning. Saturday mornings spent painting the community center, her laugh echoing off the walls when I got paint in my hair. I'd even drawn up the renovation plans for the old Bellevue Community Center building pro bono, my gift to her dream. When did it become her escape route from us? I wanted to remind her how she'd loved my obsession with safety margins when her father's business collapsed before his death, how my boring salary had funded her dream of starting the Bellevue Community Foundation. But I just stood there holding the divorce papers, watching 15 years dissolve. The pettiness started immediately. She changed the locks on our house while I was at work. My house, that I'd renovated with my own hands. She canceled my credit cards during a client dinner, leaving me humiliated. She told our friends I'd been controlling, that I monitored her spending, that I'd become paranoid about the community center renovations she was overseeing. The same friends who'd eaten at our table every Sunday suddenly stopped returning my calls. My mother flew up from San Francisco when she heard, bringing soup and the kind of fierce, protective love that only immigrant mothers possess. "She never deserved you," she said in Mandarin, unpacking Tupperware in my bare apartment kitchen. Always performing that one, like she was on stage. Mom had seen what I'd missed. How Eleanor needed an audience. How our quiet life had become too small a theater for her ambitions. My brother David was blunter. "She spent 3 years setting you up as the villain, Mark. Every couple's dinner, every party, she was writing her exit story, and we all just watched." The worst part was remembering those dinners differently now, seeing her calculated sighs when I talked about work, her eye rolls when I'd check building specs on my phone, all performed for an audience I hadn't known was watching. Marcus was so jealous of my success, I heard her tell someone at Whole Foods, loud enough for me to hear from the next aisle. He couldn't handle that I was making a real difference while he was just calculating concrete mixtures. He kept insisting the community center needed more work, more money. He couldn't stand that I'd accomplished something without his precious blueprints. Her lawyer, Richard Ashford, all silver hair and Armani suits, painted me as a bitter, mediocre man clinging to a woman who'd outgrown him. Eleanor sat there in court, dabbing her eyes with tissues she didn't need, wearing the pearl necklace I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. I noticed her handbag, though, a new Chanel that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Mr. Chen simply cannot accept that his wife evolved beyond their small beginnings, Ashford said. She's built something beautiful for this community, while he remains stuck in his rigid world of measurements and margins. The judge, charmed by Eleanor's tears and her charity work, gave her everything. The house, the investments, even my grandmother's jade bracelet, a family heirloom she'd always called gaudy. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment near the university district, 3 blocks from the community center I'd once helped design. The walls were thin. I could hear my neighbor's TV through the plaster. Sometimes at night, I'd walk past the center, see the lights on for evening programs, and wonder if my calculations about the needed repairs were just my paranoia, like Eleanor claimed. My sister Amy came by with takeout that first night after the divorce was final. She's posting pictures from charity galas, Amy said, showing me her phone. Look at this. Finally free to pursue my true purpose. In Bali. How does a charity director afford Bali? Eleanor's true purpose seemed to involve a lot of champagne and first-class flights. The Bellevue Community Foundation's Instagram became a shrine to her newfound freedom, always tagged as foundation research or donor cultivation trips. Meanwhile, I ate microwave dinners and tried to understand how I'd missed the cracks in my own life's foundation. The revelation came 3 months later, purely by accident. I was cleaning out my old email, trying to delete reminders of our life together, when I found it. An email from Eleanor, sent 2 weeks ago. The subject line read, Maldives package final payment. My blood went cold as I read it. She'd clearly meant to forward it to someone else but had typed my email out of habit. The message was brief but damning. Tristan, wire the final $47,000 from the BCF construction account. Use vendor code Structural Materials LLC like we discussed. Can't wait for our celebration. Attached was an invoice from a luxury resort. A month-long stay in an overwater villa. But what made my engineer's brain freeze was the vendor code. Structural Materials LLC. That was supposed to be the company providing steel reinforcement for the community center's renovation. The renovation that was happening right now, with kids and seniors using the building daily. My hands shook as I pulled up my old files. I still had the original structural assessment I'd done 3 years ago. The building needed serious work. Foundation reinforcement, seismic retrofitting, load-bearing wall repairs. Eleanor had assured me the foundation had hired the best contractors. She'd even shown me invoices from Structural Materials LLC for the exact amounts I'd specified. But if that money went to the Maldives, I couldn't investigate alone. I had no access to the foundation's records, and anything I said would look like the bitter ex-husband seeking revenge. But people's lives were at stake. That's when I remembered Sarah Chen. No relation, despite the shared surname. She was the foundation's newest board member, brought on 6 months before our divorce. Young, idealistic, with an accounting degree and a genuine passion for community service. She'd pulled me aside at the last charity gala I'd attended with Eleanor. Mr. Chen, she'd said quietly, I've been reviewing our financials, and some things don't add up. The construction expenses especially. Eleanor says you signed off on all the structural work. Could we talk? I'd directed her to Eleanor, confused because I'd never signed off on anything. I'd only provided the initial assessment. Now I understood why Eleanor had started the divorce proceedings shortly after. I called Sarah from a coffee shop, not trusting my thin apartment walls. Marcus? She sounded surprised but not displeased. I heard about the divorce. I'm sorry. Sarah, you said things didn't add up at the foundation. What did you mean about the construction expenses? There was a long pause. Why are you asking now? I forwarded her the email. Her sharp intake of breath told me everything. Oh my God, she whispered. Structural Materials, LLC. That's the contractor for the community center. Marcus, we have 300 people using that building every day. Can we meet? I asked. Bring a laptop. And Sarah? We need to see those construction records immediately. We met at a 24-hour diner in Northgate, far from Eleanor's usual haunts. Sarah looked exhausted, stress etched in the lines around her eyes. I'd brought my laptop with all my original structural assessments. I'm supposed to be on the finance committee, she began, sliding a flash drive across the table. But Eleanor keeps limiting my access, says it's for security reasons. But I've managed to screenshot what I could see. Sarah had been meticulous. For 6 months, she'd tracked every red flag. Foundation credit cards charged at Neiman Marcus labeled as office supplies. 5-star restaurant bills classified as community outreach meals. A Porsche lease hidden as transportation services. But what made my stomach turn were the construction expenses. Multiple payments to Structural Materials, LLC, Foundation Specialists, Inc., and Seismic Safety Systems, all for the exact amounts I'd specified in my report. These companies, Sarah said, pulling up her research, they're all registered to the same address, a UPS store in Bellevue. They're shell companies, Marcus. The money never went to actual construction. I opened my original assessment, my hands trembling. Sarah, look at this. The building needed $1.2 million in critical repairs. Load-bearing walls, foundation cracks, seismic bracing. Without these repairs, I couldn't finish the sentence. But the building permit shows all work completed, Sarah said, showing me a document. Look, signed off by a structural engineer. My blood went cold when I saw the signature. It was my mentor's, Robert Yamamoto, who'd retired 5 years ago and now lived in Hawaii. That's impossible. Robert would never sign this without inspecting the work. This signature is forged. Marcus, Sarah said quietly, what happens if those repairs weren't done? I stared at the community center's program schedule she'd pulled up. Tomorrow is the senior lunch program. 60 people. The after-school program has 40 kids. The building could, I forced myself to say it. In a serious earthquake or even just continued degradation, that building could collapse. The next hours were a blur. I couldn't wait for a board meeting. Lives were at risk. I called Dr. James Harrison, the board's longest-serving member, at 11 p.m. Dr. Harrison, this is Marcus Chen. I'm sorry for the late call, but this is an emergency. Marcus? He sounded confused but alert. Eleanor's ex-husband. Doctor, the community center building is structurally unsound. The repair money was embezzled. People need to be evacuated. There was a long pause. That's a serious accusation. I have proof. I'm the engineer who did the original assessment. Please just meet with me tonight. Look at the evidence. We met at his home. Dr. Harrison, Sarah, and Margaret Wu, who donated her husband's entire life insurance payout to the foundation. I spread out the documents on his dining room table. My original assessment, the forged inspection report, The shell company registrations. The Maldives invoice. Margaret Wu went pale. My husband died of cancer. His dying wish was that his money would keep kids safe, give them somewhere to go after school. She used it for a vacation? It's worse than that, I said. She used it for a vacation and left those kids in a death trap. Dr. Harrison was already on the phone with the city building inspector, a former student of his. Ken, James Harrison, I need an emergency structural inspection at the Bellevue Community Center. First thing tomorrow, before anyone enters that building. I spent that night awake, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with myself. Part of me wanted this to be about revenge, wanted to see Eleanor's face when her empire crumbled. But then I'd think about Mrs. Rodriguez from my building, whose grandson went to the after-school program, about the seniors who played cards there every morning, about the weight of those walls I'd calculated, the tons of concrete and steel that should have been reinforced, but weren't. I pulled out the original plans Eleanor and I had drawn up together, sitting at our kitchen table 5 years ago. She'd been so passionate then, sketching out rooms for art classes, computer labs, a commercial kitchen for community meals. We're building something that matters, Mark, she'd said, her eyes bright with genuine excitement. Something that will outlast us. When had that woman disappeared? Or had she always been a performance, and I'd just been too in love to see it? The next morning, the building inspector, Ken Nakamura, arrived at the community center at 6 a.m. Dr. Harrison, Sarah, and I met him there. Eleanor didn't know yet. Ken's inspection took 3 hours. I watched his face grow increasingly grim as he checked the foundation, tested load-bearing walls, examined the ceiling joints. Finally, he emerged, his expression grave. This building should have been condemned 2 years ago, he said quietly. The foundation has shifted 6 inches. There are cracks in 3 load-bearing walls. The seismic bracing is non-existent. In a 4.0 earthquake, hell, in a strong windstorm, this place could come down. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling it in. Immediate evacuation order. This building is closed as of now. The emergency board meeting was called for that afternoon. Eleanor arrived in her Saint Laurent suit, confident until she saw me. What is this? She demanded. Marcus has no right to be here. I invited him, Dr. Harrison said coldly. Given that the community center has been condemned this morning, we felt his engineering expertise was relevant. Eleanor's face went white. Condemned? That's impossible. We just completed renovations. No, I said, standing and unrolling the actual engineering blueprints across the conference table. You submitted paperwork saying renovations were complete. You forged my mentor's signature on an inspection report. You created shell companies to funnel $1.2 million, meant for structural repairs, into your personal accounts. Sarah began her presentation, methodical and devastating. Each slide showed the money trail, from the foundation accounts to the shell companies to Eleanor's personal expenses. The Maldives trip, the Porsche, the jewelry, all labeled as construction costs. This is ridiculous, Eleanor said, but her voice shook. Those companies are legitimate contractors. Really? I pulled out my phone and dialed. Let's call Structural Materials LLC right now. The number went to a disconnected line. I tried Foundation Specialists Inc. Same result. Margaret Wu was crying. You endangered children. My husband's money was supposed to protect them, and you put them in danger for a beach vacation. Dr. Harrison stood. The police are already on their way, Eleanor. We've provided them with all documentation. Eleanor turned to me, desperation replacing her composure. Marcus, please. You know I never meant. This is just a misunderstanding. The contractors said the work was less extensive than you thought. I used the extra funds for foundation growth. I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman I'd loved, who I'd built dreams with, who'd held my hand under so many dinner tables. Eleanor, I said quietly, you accused me of being small, of being obsessed with safety margins. You were right. I am obsessed with safety margins, because safety margins are what keep buildings from falling on children. They're what prevent 60-year-old grandmothers from being crushed by concrete they trusted was sound. You didn't just steal money. You signed death warrants and got lucky they haven't been executed yet. I picked up the forged inspection report. You know what the real irony is? If you just asked me to sign off on partial repairs, to find a way to make a smaller budget work safely, I would have helped you. Because I loved you. Because I believed in what we were building. But you were so determined to cut me out, to prove you didn't need my small expertise that you risked killing people. The police arrived then. As they read Eleanor her rights, she looked at me one last time. I gave you everything, she said. No, I replied. You took everything, and you nearly took lives. The forensic accountants eventually found it all. $2.3 million embezzled over 4 years, $1.2 million specifically from the construction fund. Eleanor got 8 years in state prison, 5 for embezzlement, 3 more for reckless endangerment. Her mother, Victoria, tried to pay restitution to avoid the scandal, but the damage was done. Seattle society had no room for someone who'd endangered children for Chanel bags. The community center was properly renovated with recovered funds and emergency city grants. I supervised the construction personally, pro bono. Every beam, every joint, every foundation pin, I checked them all. Sarah took over as director, insisting on complete transparency. Every expense posted online, every contractor verified, every inspection triple-checked. The reopening ceremony was 6 months later. Mrs. Rodriguez's grandson cut the ribbon. Dr. Harrison gave a speech about trust rebuilt on solid foundations. Margaret Wu announced a scholarship fund in her husband's name, properly managed this time. I stood in the back, watching kids race through halls that would hold their weight, seniors settling into chairs in rooms that wouldn't collapse on them. My mother stood beside me, squeezing my hand. You saved them, she said in Mandarin. No, I said, watching Sarah help a child with an art project. I just did the math. Made sure the load calculations were honest this time. The jade bracelet was returned to me by the court. I donated it to the foundation's auction. It raised $8,000 for the new after-school program. Eleanor would have hated that it sold for so little. My grandmother would have loved that it helped so much. Buildings, like relationships, require honest foundations. You can't fake structural integrity any more than you can fake love. Eventually, the cracks show. The weight becomes too much. And if you're lucky, if someone who understands load-bearing walls and safety margins spots the danger in time, you can evacuate before the collapse. The community center stands solid now. Every beam is true, every foundation pinned deep and secure. Kids laugh in its halls without danger. Seniors play cards without risk. Eleanor accused me of treating everything like an engineering project. She was right. And that obsession, that small dedication to numbers and safety margins, saved lives. Some structures can't be saved, but sometimes from their ruins, something stronger can be built. Something real. Something that actually protects people instead of pretending to. That's engineering. That's love. Both require truth in the foundation, or everything built on top is doomed to fall.